Hello? Hi, yeah, we need to talk. I'm sorry, it's just not working out. I think we should break up. It's not me, it's not even you, it's your boring brand.
Welcome to the Boring Brand Breakup, the podcast for brands with big dreams stuck in the loop of same old boring marketing tactics. It's time to break up with your crusty dusty marketing and build a brand your customers can't help but fall in love with. I'm Janisha, your host and the chronically online 2000s rom-com obsessed founder and resident wordsmith at Good Hearted Studio, the go-to copywriting studio for do-gooder brands with a mission to make the world a better place. We're popping the cherry on this potty with a mini-series on building the foundations for a swoon-worthy brand. Why am I doing this? Because after working in marketing for years, I was so sad seeing my favorite brands disappear when I could see front and center the red flag mistakes they're making that are hurting their chances of success. In my opinion, there's no reason why a low budget should equal a boring brand. So I'm arming you with this juicy podcast series combining my best advice and recommendations, plus the brains of some of my fave brand marketing powerhouses. Even better, I'm pairing this up with a handy downloadable guide so you can take your knowledge, fresh creative ideas, and put it all into action. Okay, cell phones on silent, the show's about to begin. Let's get into it. Today we're diving into one of the most foundational and often overlooked pieces of your marketing puzzle, your website. Think of your website as your brand's first date with your audience. If it's giving high maintenance energy with clunky navigation or slow loading speeds, or worse, if it's not showing up as your authentic self, you're practically handing your dream customers a reason to swipe left. Your website is the moment when love at first sight happens or doesn't. It's the place where first impressions are made, relationships are built, and sparks fly. And if your website isn't giving your audience butterflies from the get-go, chances are it's working against you. That's why in this episode, I'm sitting down with the lovely Keira from Keira Rose Creative to chat all things websites, user experience, and fixes you can make to stop giving your audience the ick. Keira is a designer with a gift for creating websites that are as magnetic as they are functional. Coming from a background in social media marketing, she's no stranger to blending strategy, creativity, and a touch of magic to bring brands to life online. Since pivoting her business into a design studio last year, she's been helping blossoming business owners create show-it websites that not only look good but work hard, backed by thoughtful UX and strategic design. Her superpower, bringing together websites that radiate your inner magic while effortlessly guiding your audience from curious scroller to head over heels customer. And today she's sharing her expert advice to help you do just that too. Welcome. So good to have you on today to chat about all things website. To start off, maybe we can talk a little bit about what website UX is and why it's so important for small businesses anyway.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here. So UX is a bit of a term that is kind of thrown around a lot, and it's often something that isn't explained too often, and it's actually not as complicated as we might think it is. So UX essentially means user experience, and that is just how a potential client or customer feels when they come onto your website. So it's about how the website looks, how it is to navigate, the content on the website, and essentially just how quickly the person coming onto your website can find what they need and get there.
And I feel like it's super important for brands to make sure that they're making a really good first impression when people are coming onto their websites, because
absolutely,
like, that is such a make or break moment. And if it's really, not up to scratch, then you're missing out on a chance to really connect with your customers, I feel like.
And there's so much competition out there already. And at the end of the day, pretty much every business has a website, right? And if yours isn't cutting it, then they're going to go back to Google or back to social media or wherever they came from before they landed on your website. And they're going to go and look at another competitor. So UX can be the thing that makes or breaks like your website, but also whether or not you land that customer or that client.
So true, because when you think about it, like anytime I go on a website, if it loads too slowly or I can't find like what I'm looking for, like I can't find the right buttons and everything, it's not laid out properly, or if it's super overcomplicated and like the buttons aren't working or something, it's super frustrating, and I'm like, why am I going to waste my time?
It literally like gives you the ick.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, okay, not for me, see ya. And then
Exactly.
you don't remember, and you potentially have lost a client or a customer.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time brands are operating from the sense that people are already going to be obsessed and love their brand, so they're going to put up with those little things. But even if someone loves your brand, like they probably don't want to put up with all those little things, but it's super important because you want to make things as easy as possible, especially because people are lazy, like they don't want to click through.
And people have the shortest attention span nowadays, so if it's taking them more than a couple of seconds to find what it is that they're looking for, you've already lost their attention. It's gone.
Yeah, so true. And when people have so much like fluff all over their website and it's just messy, which is why I'm super excited for us to chat today, because I feel like there are a lot of just like easy mistakes that brands are making. And I know that, you know, you would know too, coming from like a social media background, there's only so much you can do to help. And it's like you're driving all this traffic to your website, but then you're losing people because things aren't set up properly.
Yeah.
And you can see all these kind of red flag mistakes and you're like, you could just fix this and this and this, and it would give you such a better chance at success. But people just don't know better. And it's really sucks to then see like brands that have a really good mission or want to do good just kind of disappear because they are making these really simple mistakes.
That's it. Like you can have the most amazing product or the most amazing service or like the best 5-star experience you provide for your clients, but if someone gets onto your website and there is, you know, just like the smallest thing, maybe a link is broken and a link isn't working, then like the product or the service that you're offering essentially kind of falls flat.
Yeah, and it almost kind of like it hurts that cohesive like brand experience because people are like, well, if you've, you know, missed a detail on this, what else are you going to sort of miss in either when we're working together or if I'm shopping from you, like if you haven't thought about these details and from the customer's perspective. Maybe we can chat a little bit about sort of maybe the biggest mistakes you see people making with their websites.
Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, so essentially a lot of mistakes I see people making with their website come down to when they do decide to DIY, and I'm absolutely not against DIY, and I think especially for smaller businesses, especially with the cost of living nowadays and how expensive it is to run a business, sometimes your only option is to DIY. But I think a lot of business owners don't prioritize their website as much in terms of like the time and the effort that they put into it and the research that they do to make sure it's doing the right thing compared to other platforms such as maybe social media or even email marketing. And so then, like we were talking about the customer journey, people get to the website and it kind of just falls flat. Yeah. So I think a lot of something that's really important for business owners when they are DIYing their website is just to give it that little bit of extra time and attention that it deserves, and also know that realistically your website is never fully complete. I think a lot of people will build a website and be like, yep, this is great, and then it gets 2 years down the track, they haven't updated their testimonials, they haven't updated their portfolio, maybe links are broken and not working. So often it's just like those little mistakes that can happen when you are DIYing or even when you've had your website designed by a professional website designer, but you're not giving it the maintenance that it needs and deserves over time as well. A little bit of TLC.
Yeah, so true. And especially because, you know, it's like your digital shop front, but it's also like your little home on the internet.
Yeah.
And the same way you'd like take care of your house and like keep everything up to scratch, you need to do the same thing with your website. Otherwise,
that's such a good analogy. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not really going to reflect, you know, you, and it's not going to feel really welcoming. It's just going to feel a bit messy and cluttered. And I think this is something with, you find a lot of the time with, I guess, more established businesses, they have so much happening that it's all on their website. It's like, it's kind of like hoarding. Like you need to go through and declutter a little bit as well. But yeah, and then also like with any brand, people don't always know what they want to say. So it just sort of ends up not being totally clear on all the information that they're putting out.
Or even like, you know, your brand evolves in places like social media so quickly over time, and your website needs to evolve with that, because if you don't evolve it, then you've got a lot of inconsistency going on there. And then again, that comes down to the user experience. They're going to see a part of your brand on social media or in email marketing or print marketing, whatever it might be, and then they're going to get onto your website and it doesn't match, and then something feels off and then you've lost them. So yeah, just really making sure that if you are DIYing your website, or even if you have made the sometimes quite big investment in getting your website done, that you are updating it and auditing it and just making sure everything's nice and cohesive as time goes on.
Yeah, and I also think that, you know, even if you choose not to go down the path of DIY like you do end up getting someone to build it for you, because this is something I see a lot, especially with, you know, businesses that have been burned by working with agencies before. Like it's something that can really happen with websites where someone doesn't know enough about what goes into a website build. And for us, we have like backgrounds in marketing, so even if, like for me, I built my website, but I don't know everything about websites, but I know how to, you know, DIY enough. But if I was outsourcing to someone, I also know what to ask and like what elements should be covered, so I feel confident in that. But I feel like a lot of the time founders don't have those tools. So then, you know, if they end up going to the first person that pops up on Google that builds websites, it's usually just whoever's got enough money to spend to have that top spot.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're spending like thousands of dollars on a website build. But for someone who doesn't know anything about a website build, they're like, oh, that's probably like, you know, how much I should be spending. That's great. And it might not totally suit their needs. And it might not even tick all the boxes of what they're looking for. And a lot of the time, then you end up with like more problems than what you started with. Yeah. Especially like I think choosing platforms as well, because if you know you don't have like a giant catalog of products or something like that, you probably don't need like a really like a website that is a website platform that's suited to that. Like you might be better suited to something that you can actually get in the back end and be able to update without going to your website developer every single time.
Yeah, that's something I'm really big on with my clients, is giving them that core level of education. So my primary platform is Showit, which is primarily for service-based businesses. It can be for businesses that have a couple of digital products, but if they have more than a couple, then I'd probably be like saying to them, you know, you should probably get on somewhere like Showit, which is more, Shopify, which is more for e-commerce. So that's something that I really try and do when I have clients on board, is not, you know, just deliver them this website and they're like, okay, so I've got a good looking website. Like what now? What happens if I need to go and change this or change that? So make sure that they are educated along the way, making sure that they know that, you know, I can help them find a copywriter if they need a bit more assistance with SEO, because that isn't my primary level of expertise when it comes to websites. I can help them find those people. And then right at the end, before I hand over their website, we jump on a call together and we actually go through the back end of their website in the platform itself, and whether they have completed like all the copy and stuff. So if there are gaps, I will show them this is how you can update that, or if you ever need to change this link, this is how you can do that. And I think business owners owe it to themselves, if they are investing that amount of money in something, to actually understand how to use it and how to update it, because if you don't, then the chances are you're probably going to spend more money constantly going back to a website designer with the smallest tweaks that you could learn how to do yourself.
And it's super empowering, and then you have the confidence to be able to make those changes, and like then you've built really good foundations, and then you can kind of just maintain it as you're going. So I think that's really good and important as well.
Yeah, I'm super big on educating business owners. I feel like we're obviously only an expert in what it is that we do, but yeah, when we're making investments, we really do owe it to ourselves to research and also to be empowered to, you know, make sure the investments that we are making are the right ones and the best ones.
Exactly. And I love that you're like not about like gatekeeping that information.
No.
You know, it's better to just have it out there, and at least then, you know, your business can succeed.
It's more worthwhile for them that way.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to know, because I feel like you'll be really good with this, what the sort of essential parts of a website to make a great first impression.
Number one, I feel like you're going to know this answer. It's your homepage. Yes. I think there's a statistic that gets thrown around a lot in the web design world, and it's like something like you have 0.05 seconds to make a great first impression. And if you think about that when you jump onto a website, that's like literally as soon as the website loads, someone is making a decision as soon as they see the colors and the text come up before they've even read it, whether or not they're going to keep browsing. So your homepage is super, super important. And these two kind of go hand in hand. I don't think one's more important than the other. Depending on the kind of person you are, you're probably either going to be more focused on the copy or the design, but they really do go hand in hand. You know, you can have the most beautifully designed website, but if the words fall flat, then it's not going to make a good first impression. Vice versa, you can have a website that isn't designed really well, but that's got excellent copy, but if it doesn't look good, then you're not going to be enticed to go through and actually read the copy itself. Another one, coming back to user experience, so UX, is the navigation. You really, really need to make it easy for your customers to be able to navigate around your website. So making sure that they can get quickly to any page that they want to. They can find your inquiry form if they're just jumping on there, or they can quickly shop the product that they need. If that's not super simple and the next step isn't clear for them, again, you're going to lose them.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like so much goes into play with that. And also when you mentioned about sort of copy and design going hand in hand, that's such a big part of UX as well, because if you have really great copy, but, you know, it's not laid out in a good way where it makes it super easy for people to read, or, you know, you can have like a great piece of text, but if it's just this giant block, like no one's going to read it, because it's like people just are skimmers. Like we love to like skim there, and you can then use UX to make it easier by, you know, highlighting certain things and like laying it out in a certain way.
Having like your hierarchy with your content, so making sure that your headings are nice and clear, so people can just do a quick scroll and quickly find what it is that they're looking for on that particular page. Your call to action buttons, that they're clearly stating what the next step is and giving you the option to click on that link to get there as well.
Yeah, and that's something I find with obviously being a copywriter, like weaving those sort of elements into website copy so that it's still fun and on brand, but it's also still clear. Like the button text can be fun, but it should also still make sense on where you're going next.
Where to next.
Yeah, and also using, you know, your little subheader text for SEO things. So it's like even if you've got like a fun heading, so that it's still coming up in search, because it's always that first bit. I'm no heaps about SEO, but
I'm just on the basics of SEO as well. I had a client recently ask, and I was like, I can do a little bit in terms of design in the back end, but we'll bring in the expert for that one.
The main thing I know about that is that it's like, in terms of keywords, it's like you want it at the front or like in the start of things. So it's usually, I know copy-wise, I write for like the content first, and then I'll go back and make it like a little bit more SEO friendly so that it's, you know, doing the most for it. But there's just all these different elements to go into it, and I feel like making a few small tweaks can really make such a big difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to talk a little bit about branding wise, the different elements for that you feel go into everything, like consistent branding and how that can sort of translate across brand's website.
Yeah, of course. As a designer, I wouldn't say I'm biased, because I still think I would probably think it's important as a business owner, even if I wasn't heavily in the design world. But it is so important before working with a website designer to make sure that your branding is complete. And by complete, I mean you've got more than just one logo, you've got more than just one font, because if it's not complete, it's going to be really hard for the designer to actually do their best work. And this is a conversation that I have here and there with clients, you know, like they'll inquire and I'll go and, you know, check out their socials or check out their existing website if they have one. And if I don't see a complete branding identity, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
I guess without that, it's going to feel a little bit messy in the customer journey. It's not going to be super memorable. It's not going to be super unique. And like we've said, there's not even a number of webs like that we can put on how many websites there are in the world. So it's really important that your branding is set in stone so that your designer can use the right things in the right places to make that great first impression.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to like brand identity. Like if you haven't sorted your messaging or know who you are or worked with someone who can help pull all those elements out, it's going to make it really hard for you to have a website that is working hard for you, because even when you engage a copywriter or a designer, like they're going to pull these bits and pieces out for you. But if you want it to all really come together, you need someone who's going to like really help, you know, you do the work basically the same way you would like go and see like a therapist or do a self-development course. It's kind of the same way. And otherwise I feel like it won't evolve with you either, because if it doesn't feel very, you know, consistent and true to your brand, then, you know, a designer will build you a beautiful website and it will do all the things, but then it might be like 6 months later and you're like, oh, it's kind of not really what it doesn't feel right for me. It's like still serving a purpose and it's great, but you're going to feel like you need to refresh it again.
And again, like a website is a big investment. So it's like you may as well do the best thing and make sure that your branding is complete first, so that the designer can do their best work, but also so that you're not needing to engage a designer again 6 months or 12 months down the track. There's nothing worse than like making a big investment at the time of being like, like this is so good, and then thinking about it or looking a bit more into it in 6 months and being like, oh, should have thought about that first.
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of the time with founders as well, especially if you're like a service provider, or even if it's product based but you are the face of your brand, or it's like very personal to you, a lot of the time your branding is very intertwined with your own personality.
Absolutely.
And so if you're, you know, infusing that into there, but there are certain areas where you're evolving, you haven't done the work, it can like not always translate, or it doesn't feel like you when it comes across onto your website, because you're trying to like be like somebody else and not lean into the elements that are unique to you and your story that you want on your website.
I think like business is one of the biggest self-development journeys ever, and then if you own a brand that is quite personal on top of that, and you are the face of the brand, then your branding does evolve so much with you over time, and it's definitely worth investing in the right person and giving it the time and love it deserves, as well as your website and as well as your other marketing platforms.
Yeah. And it can feel like a very like vulnerable journey because like putting yourself out there on your website, like it's your story, it's very personal, and you're sort of inviting people to come and like learn about you and like make a decision whether they want to work with you or shop from you. So yeah, it can be like very heavy, and I feel like that's a lot of the time a big roadblock that I know I faced even with bringing my website together. I feel like I had 101 different excuses on why it wasn't ready yet, but a lot of the time it was just because it's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is really scary. And I think a website is something that does change a little bit less than social media. Like, you know, social media, you're posting a couple of times a week, you're posting on stories and your feed. So it's like it is kind of naturally evolving, and we do look at websites often as like a one and done, but it's needing to remember in that process too that you can update that over time, and you should be updating that over time as you evolve, but making sure you've got the right foundations there so that you're not, you know, completely throwing the whole thing in the bin every time, because that's so costly.
Yeah, absolutely. And not even just costly, like, you know, money-wise, like just as a time investment as well. And if you feel like you have to go back and do this like deep inner work every time you want to update your website, that is like exhausting in itself.
Yeah,
it makes you
emotionally
want to put it up.
taxing.
Yes, definitely. So it can be a lot, but if you have like the right foundation set up, then it can make it a lot easier so that you can be like, oh, I just want to like tweak these little bits and do this.
Exactly. It's just doing those tweaks and like that auditing over time to just make sure that it feels right for you.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like auditing is a huge thing, like to almost do regularly the same way you go to the doctors and get your checks done, like, you know, check your links are working, check your page is loading properly, the photos and stuff, the correct sizing, I feel like. Yeah, there's so many little easy fixes that people can make.
Another big one is mobile responsiveness too. Like when we think about websites, we do often the first thing we're thinking of and imagining in our head is a website on a laptop or a computer screen. But nowadays, so many of us are accessing websites on their phone. I guess this is kind of circling back to when we're talking about mistakes that people are making, really making sure that you're optimizing your website for like mobile devices, even tablet devices like iPads and whatnot too, and making sure it's responsive on there and checking over time that it's still responsive, because I do know in Show It, like I love Show It as a platform. It's so versatile in terms of design and creativity, which is really up my alley, but it's a lot easier to be creative and set things up and like set up unique codes and all that sort of stuff on a computer screen. But if something's going to go wrong, it tends to be on mobile. So that's something that I've even had to learn since learning Show It as a platform, is making sure that I'm always checking that it's responsive on mobile devices too.
So true. And I feel like checking in at, you know, each stage of the design, which obviously if you have a designer, they're probably doing that as well. But if you are DIYing especially, you might have like a chunk of text that looks really like easy to read when you're on desktop because there's so much space, but then when it's on your phone, it takes up the whole screen and it's this giant paragraph, and people are like scrolling through like, oh my gosh, I don't want to read that. It's a lot. So making everything super digestible and easy. I feel like mobile responsiveness is a huge one, and I struggle with that myself because when I launched my website, I was like, look at it on desktop, it looks really good. And then I'm such like a long-winded sentence person, so the copy on my own website is, I'm like, I just have so much to say. But it's definitely, you know, it's a work in progress. It's still something I know I need to go back on myself,
refine
it, and really, like, because I have so much that's so good, I can use it for all these different areas, but just to make it as concise and easy as possible for people to be like, yep, this is what you do, like, this is a bit about you, and get into it, instead of, you know, overwhelming them and almost like coming on too strong and like, you know, going on a first date and like trauma dumping, oversharing about everything to someone. Just like bring it in small doses. And it comes back to sort of the customer journey, like really thinking about what stage someone is at. Like if they're in that early phase where they've just discovered you, it's like that very like talking stage first date part. Like they probably don't need to know every little thing about you. They're still just like getting to know you. And you want to keep things like light and easy.
That's it.
But yeah, and then as they sort of go on and they get to know you more, and I find a lot of the time I'm like this with brands that I love, like whether they're product based or service based, the more I learn about them on my own terms. I love when that's available, but it's not overwhelming me. So that I can go through, and if I'm like, wow, I love this so much, I want to learn more about this story, everything's there. They'll have like blogs I can stalk or on their about page, and like it makes it super easy. But if I'm just looking at it straight on, it's not like heaps of pop-ups and just so much.
You came on too hard.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, it's overwhelming. And then it just gives you the ick and makes you want to, go the other way. And especially when it's someone who, without all that, you probably are going to connect with that brand and they might really solve a problem for you that you're really struggling with, and they're the perfect fit for you, but it's just lost in all this like confusion. And so really thinking about that it's like you might be scaring off the actual like dream customers and clients that are looking for you just because it's messy or your website loaded too slowly or something like that, and that's such a shame.
It's just coming back to like that customer journey, like when they're landing on your homepage, they've gone to your website for a reason, right? They are already semi-sold. Maybe they want to inquire, maybe they want to purchase a product, maybe they want to learn more about like your brand and your mission, maybe they want to learn more about your services or your products, and it's making sure that homepage really quickly takes them there instead of just dumping your entire life story on them, because they're just going to turn around and walk the other way and they're definitely not going on a second date.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you know what it reminds me of? When you're trying to bake something and you look up a recipe and the first bit is like the baker's entire life story and you're like, jump to recipe. Whoever invented jump to recipe button, love them.
And that's coming back to the navigation that I was talking about, something that I see that a lot of people don't do on websites that I have been taught to do, and that's really stuck with me as being something important. I'm like, why does everyone not do this? Is the navigation bar, right? You have one at the top and it's got a link to each of your pages and probably a contact form, maybe a couple of social buttons, the same in your footer at the bottom. What happens if you have a long website page and you're stuck in the middle of the page and you know where you want to go and you can't find that button? You've lost them. So making sure that like that navigation bar at the top, you can set it up so that it sticks with the user as they scroll down. So at any point on the page, they can decide that they want to go to another page and click there without having to scroll all the way up to the top or all the way back up to the bottom. Or you can just have like a little, we call it like a hamburger icon. So it's like those three lines that look like a menu sort of button, and making sure that there's something like that that's always on the screen for them to click as well. And then when they click it, they have like a little pop-up and that has all of the navigation points too.
Ah, that's so good and such a good point, because I know that I'm always conscious of that with website pages, that I don't want it to be too long of a page, even when there's, more I want to put in there, because I don't want people to get too lost in there. But having an easy little navigation button.
It's like such a small thing, but it just makes such a big difference across the whole website for the user.
And having it sort of like readily available there, it's almost like, you're not locked into anything and stuck on this page. You can leave anytime you want, and it gives people that peace of mind. So they're like, okay, like it's fine. So good. And I feel like it'd be like driving somewhere, you have your maps there. You might not even need it. You might know where you're going, but just having it there for like peace of mind.
Or even if we're thinking about the whole browser, it's like at any point, no matter what website you're on, you can always click the back button to get back to where you were. You can always click forward. So it's like that's always there on the screen, and it just makes that user experience so much easier. Like, how would you go back without that back button? You know what I mean? Like, it's there for a reason, and you should have that option on your website too. Otherwise, people are going to press that back button. They're going to go to another website.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't want them to just
jump back to Google.
Yeah, exactly. Completely leave. Just give them a little out, but they can still stick around.
Yeah, exactly.
So good. I love that so much. That's a really good one. I feel like people can, and you can really easily add that on as well to your website to really look into like navigation elements of it, and also making it really easy, like, as much as you want to customize things and make it fun, keep some things, really clear. Like, I'm big on, even though I will customize copy on like fun things on your website, the main menu bar at the top, I'm like, I don't mess with those buttons, the button text, because I'm like, people want it really simple, like your home, your about, like contact. Yes, you can make it like fun. I know that even with things like your blog, people will call it like the journal or something else. And I'm like, you can put that on the actual page, but I'm like, in the navigation, just make it super easy for people, because I can't think how many times I'm looking for something and they've named it something really
super
random.
Creative.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's great and fun, but if you're thinking customer journey again, I don't know anything about you yet, so I don't know why it's called that or what it is even before I'm there. It's thinking about the fact that not everyone knows you yet.
Yes. Yeah. And people are there for a purpose most of the time. Like, I think we're sort of kidding ourselves if we think someone's just jumping on our website just to like sit, grab a cup of tea and read through each page with detail. They've come there for a purpose. So that navigation is just allowing them to simply get to where they need as soon as possible.
And like sort of lay out the options super easily as well. So I know a big thing, like even with like services or products, is like have, your best packages like on your homepage so people can really easily like find what they're looking for. And like you're as like a founder, you're super close to your brand, so you know everything about it, but other people don't. And even if it's someone like your friends who you feel like you're talking about it to them all the time, they might be like, oh, so like what is that, like what do you even do? Like
I mean, a lot of my friends still don't know what I do.
Exactly. And there's certain things where I feel like I tell like my story all the time, or I talk about what I do all the time, but other people still don't know. So it's like there's never any harm in like to be more repetitive. Like, it's, if anything, like have it as easy as possible, like laid out there, because you might have it written somewhere on your website, like what you do, what the services are, and then you know they've gotten to the bottom of the page and they might not have even read that part of the top, so you probably need to reiterate it again anyway. But yeah, it'll be like certain parts of your story where you're like, I already said that somewhere, but it's like, no, say it again, say it all the time.
That's it. Like even with coming from like my background in social media, like it's, you do sometimes feel repetitive, but you need to be repetitive to have something stick in someone's mind. It's like going all the way back to our uni days, the marketing rule of 7. I reckon it's so much more than 7 nowadays. I know that's really old, but you have to repeat yourself and you have to be super clear over and over. And I guess whoever's listening to this, regardless of what industry you're in, there's something that you're an expert at that your customers or clients aren't. And there's probably like whether you work in person or whether you're selling products, you're often getting like these questions over and over, and making sure that those are in your website, because that technical stuff that is just so simple to you and like second nature isn't to someone else. So just making sure that when you are, you know, designing your website, launching your website, whether you're doing it yourself or even if you're going and updating it in the future, that you're stepping into the shoes of someone who isn't an expert at what you do, and making sure that you are making sure that they understand what you do as well.
And I think a big part of that as well is, and also comes into like humanizing your brand and stuff. A big part of that starts on your website, because I think a lot of the time people think that certain parts of their story aren't important or aren't relevant to their business, but it really is. Because I can't think how many times like my old business was Happy Waffle Co, where I did like these brunch boxes and things. For one, I feel like I talk about that all the time, but anytime I talk about it, people are always like, oh, I didn't know you did that. And I'm like, oh, I just forgot that. Like, I feel like I go on about it constantly. But it like, it's a unique part of my story and like separates me from, you know, other copywriters out there, and people connect with these parts of your story and then decide whether or not they want to work from you or buy from you. So there's so much power in putting that into your brand and like making it really clear on your website, all these little parts of your story. And that's why it's also really beneficial when you work with someone else, because they can help you see those parts and be like, oh, that's like great.
Yeah, pull it out of you, just like you have with my website copy.
Because I will like hear people talk about stuff and I'm like, that needs to be on your website. I'm like, that's such a big part of your story. But because we're so close to it, sometimes it can be really hard to see. And the amount of times I will like chat to brands and I've like, you know, had a stalk of their website, but I'm like, it looks great, like it looks amazing, everything's set up really well, but I'm like, I can't feel you in it. Like even if they have an about page, if it's super like basic and it's not really telling a story on like why you started this, because I'm like, I know that if you're starting this brand, you didn't start it just because you're like, oh, I want to make money. And if you did, it's probably like that's fine, but that doesn't keep you going through when things are really hard and rough. But it's like when you have a really clear mission, that is something that you need to put on there, because that'll help connect people that are aligned in the same way or have gone through the same struggles. Because a lot of the time the product or service you're creating is because you've struggled with that yourself and you want to be able to help other people with the same thing.
And what you put out there, you attract. So the more that you put out of yourself, I've found, like I always get asked, like, who's your ideal client? I'm like, it's kind of like a copy paste of me. So I've found the more that I've been through many iterations of my own business over the years. I've gone a little bit more in like the agency direction, and I've come back to something that is more personal than ever. But that's when I've attracted the most aligned clients, is when I am putting more of me into that. But then also in the same breath, knowing when to draw the line.
Exactly. Yeah, because there are certain elements where, you know, you don't need to tell every little detail, but there are some parts of it where it really helps you attract the right people. So a big thing that I find when I'm looking at other people in the space or industry or competitors or anything like that is that sometimes it feels like people don't want to pick a side. Like they are really really eager to, you know, please everybody and not have too firm of opinions and not alienate anybody. But one of my biggest advice always is like, definitely don't be afraid to alienate some people, because that really helps you build your community. And if you're scared of scaring people off, it's like those people probably wouldn't have connected with your brand and your message once they got to know you or anything like that anyway. So like, what's the point if you just like get rid of them now? That's great. And then you're going to have such a better relationship with the people who actually like you've created this for and align with you. So there's a lot of like good that comes with being truly authentic to yourself and having a really firm opinion on things. And I find like I feel so much better when I do that in my brand as well, and like I encourage other brands
it's authentic
to. Yeah, and then I feel you connect a lot more with people. Like you get a much better like community response, because people are like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling the same way too. Whereas I've like read through so many websites where it's really wishy-washy.
You're like, which side of the fence are you on?
Yeah, and it almost seems like a little bit boring, because I'm like, okay, so you're like, oh, this is what I love to do, but I'll also do this as well. It's like, pick a side. Like, it's really
also fun to like challenge people's beliefs too. Like, I have had instances where I've shared, you know, like an opinion on something that I have and my reason why, and people will come to me and they will say like, you know, like I didn't think about it that way before. So like, yeah, you might, I guess, put some people off, but you might actually attract some people through that too, who haven't looked at it through your eyes, or even your expertise.
Exactly. And it like sort of challenges their beliefs and makes them think a little differently, and then helps your overall mission, because you know you're getting other people who might not be thinking the same.
And it's like you started your business because you love what you do, and I guess you probably want to create freedom or something like that, some sort of more enjoyment in your life for yourself. So like, why sort of sit on the fence and try and be for everyone and potentially create more problems for yourself when you could sit on the side of the fence that you are, you know, on, and then it's just so much more enjoyable for yourself, but also your customers or clients as well.
And like they always say in marketing, it's like when you try to be for everyone, you end up being for no one. And I feel like that really comes across, because if you can't see yourself as a consumer in someone else's sort of like branding and copy and everything, and you don't truly resonate, you're like, oh, this probably isn't for me, just because they're trying to please everybody. But it's like, if they truly were, you know, seeing you and that reflected in their design and the copy and every element of their branding and on their website, then you'd be like, this is exactly for me. Like I feel at home here, and that's exactly what you want.
And that's so much easier being the business owner too, is having people come to you or buy from you that are like sold and really firm in their decision too. It's less of that almost like eagerness or like clinginess, even of like, no, like, please work with me.
Exactly. And then it's also like, there's not going to be this like disconnect where, you know, someone works with you or shops from you and it wasn't what they're expecting, because you're being super like upfront and honest about, you know, the way that you work and what your values are and all of that from the get-go. Like, people know that, and it usually will help them nurture through like the customer journey, but also then they know what they're getting,
what they're in for.
And it's like, I know that even myself in sort of my branding and everything, I own the fact that I'm a very like imperfect person, and a lot of the time people resonate with that, because they're like, you know, I don't want to work with someone who's like robotic and perfect and pretends like they know everything, because I'm like, you know, I'm good at what I do, but I don't know everything about everything. And like, I'm a human being, like I'm a copywriter, but I might make a typo, like I mess up on things. But then it's also good because people will resonate with that, but then when they work with me, they're never gonna, you know, come across like being like, oh, like you're so like all over the place and this and that, because I'm like, well, you knew what you were getting into. Like, I wasn't
I said that on my website.
I'm like, it wasn't a secret. So I'm like, maybe you didn't do your due diligence, but like from every stage. And I also found a big part of that when, you know, I would get on calls with people and stuff. In the beginning of my business, I felt this real like need to look super perfect and like come across a certain way. And now when I talk to people on calls, I'm very like relaxed about it, and I'm just me, because they're going to be working with me. I want them to feel, you know, exactly what it's like, not that I'm, you know, trying to be someone who I'm not. But and then I feel like a big part of that is then on your website you can get that to do the heavy lifting for you, so that all those things that would come across when someone speaks with you directly, it already lives on your website. So when people are doing a stalk and wanting to get to know you, they can get all that information super easily.
And before you have that first call with them, or however it is that they get in touch and purchase from you, they already know you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, so much easier for you and also for them as well. Like, you both know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, so true. So maybe to wrap up, we'll chat a little bit about, for someone who's looking to overhaul their website, they've listened to us chat and they're like, okay, I see the red flags. I need to give my website a bit of TLC, a bit of a refresh. Where do you think people should start with that? Like, sort of, if it's a whole chuck it in the bin situation, or like what the process should look like?
I think they should firstly get clear on who it is that's landing on their website. So really getting clear on who their target customer or client is, stepping right into their shoes and browsing their own website, both on mobile but also on desktop, from the perspective of that customer. So really trying to sort of take your business owner hat off and maybe, I guess, making a bit of like a pros and a cons list, or like a strengths and a weaknesses, identifying any gaps, things that aren't relevant anymore, and I guess sort of starting to action those. So maybe some things that you might find is, this is one we've said a lot, but it's so important, is links, making sure that all your links are working, or that the call to action buttons are taking people to the right step, making sure that your content is up to date. So whether that's like your products or services, whether or not you put your pricing on your website, that's up to date, making sure things like your contact form work. So maybe giving a little test fill out and making sure that it's actually sending to your inbox, because it'd be really awkward if someone inquired and then they never heard from you. And things like the actual content itself. So if it's been a while since you've had your branding photos updated, maybe updating something like that. If you're feeling like your business has evolved, or maybe you've got some new versions of products or something like that, and you haven't had good photos taken of those for a while too, making sure that like the content visually is really good, and then having a good scan through your copy as well, and making sure that you know, no errors, all that sort of stuff, that it is infusing you and your personality and really reflective of where your business is at. I think from there as well, making sure that when we go back to talking about great first impressions, that you've really nailed your homepage. Like, I cannot explain how important your homepage, you know, is. You could have an excellent services page or an excellent product page for like your best selling product, but people aren't landing on that page when they get to your website. They're landing on your homepage. So I don't know if this is like a little shameless plug here, but I do have a freebie. So you can actually jump onto my website, or maybe we'll even just pop a link in the show notes. And essentially this freebie is called the homepage handbook. Bit of a tongue twister. And inside you have a checklist of all of the different things that your homepage needs. I've also broken up your homepage into different sections. I've given you some copy prompts as well. So if you're feeling like you maybe don't know where to start, that could be a good place to start. And I guess if you're smart enough and tactful, you could probably apply that to other pages in different ways across your website as well.
And a lot of the time I found a homepage is like, it's little bits and pieces from all over in your website. So if you look at your guide like really holistically, you can be like, oh yeah, that is from this page, and I can do this here.
There's like a section on your about, like on your homepage that's got a little bit about you. So then when you move across to the about page, that's where you then delve a little bit deeper. And the same with all the other different sections on your homepage.
And I have also downloaded this freebie, and it's excellent. So definitely recommend checking it out. It's so good, because I like went through it and I was like, I need to overhaul my homepage right now. I need to follow this and go through the checklist, and you've just laid everything out so well. So
thank you.
Super, super valuable. Definitely recommend checking that out. Also, quickly, I love that you touched on about imagery, updating your brand imagery, because I am such a big believer that like good imagery can really like take your website to the next level. Like even if other elements aren't completely up to scratch yet, like having that really taken care of can make the biggest difference and make things look that much more professional and put together and just really cohesive. So,
it definitely adds professionalism and credibility to a website. And I think like when we were chatting about how design and copy is just as important, like obviously a picture is very visual, but a picture also tells a story itself too. So it kind of is copy without actually being copy. And I think if, your pictures are looking like the lighting isn't great, or maybe you've taken them at home and you haven't got the right props and all that sort of stuff, it can sort of really give that like DIY kind of feel. And it's like maybe your website is DIY and you have used a template, or maybe you've just completely done it yourself. But if you've got those professional photos, it really sort of brings it up a notch. So that's definitely like a big one. I think it's good to invest in really good professional photography, whether you're product-based or service-based. Even if you're product-based, like having good pictures of you as like a founder or your team is really great to have like on your website. Humanizing the brand.
Yeah, exactly. So people can connect with you. And when it looks, there is a time and place for these like raw, authentic behind the scenes photos and things, but having some really good quality professional photos is really great as well. And especially later on in this podcast series when we chat about, you know, PR and things, having really great photos ties into all these different elements. So
exactly, they can be used across the board.
Yeah, there's so much you can get out of it. Amazing. Well, this was so good to chat about. I feel like there's so many little nuggets in there of like good things people can take away to, you know, make some quick fixes to their website and then have a really good sit down and audit on their website.
Thank you so much for having me. It was definitely a good chat. I feel like, yeah, I could talk about this forever and ever.
Yes. And if you want to connect with Keira, you definitely do. You can find her on Instagram at Keira Rose Creative, and it'll all be in the show notes, of course, as well. But yes, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your advice. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. The other 4 episodes of this 5-episode mini-series on breaking up with your boring brand are out now, ready for you to binge. If you loved this ep, please share it with a friend. You can gently tell them it's the wake-up call their marketing is feeling a bit boresome, or pretend it's totally unrelated. If you can't get enough of me, connect with me on socials at Good Hearted Studio. I love to chat and yap and help raise the voices of good-hearted brands with a mission to make the world a better place. Okay, love you, bye.